Hello, everyone. My name is Sola. I'm the principal consultant of Sola and Associates, and we are a strategy and communications training and consulting firm dedicated on enabling businesses, brands, and organizations to achieve their desired objectives through strategic communications, organizational effectiveness, and reputation risk management. So, today's video is going to be about how public relations and communications work together. This month, we'll be talking a lot about public relations, what it means, how to manage the media, stakeholder management, and all of that. And that is what so I started to put together this video just to really talk about the difference between public relations and communications, the areas that where they sort of like fuse, but there are also areas in which they sort of diverge. And I think this is important because a lot of us find ourselves in spaces where we sometimes may need to lean more on the PR side of things and the com side of things. I see that a lot of people are very keen to blend the two together, but I think it's important to distinguish because I think the fact that we haven't differentiated between the two practices has affected us as a profession because recruiters recruit, they assume that if they get somebody who is very good in one area, then the person is good in all areas. And we have a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the people that they've recruited or the people that or agencies that they even sourced to get to do certain things because we have not emphasized on our specialisms and the differentiation. So I really spent some time, and you may notice we had already done a video. I had done one video, and then when I saw that there was a tendency for certain things I said to have been misunderstood, and perhaps I didn't emphasize so well, and some things I think also I didn't my terminologies I didn't make clear at the beginning. So I took down that video, and I'm doing another one which I think is more will leaves less room, I think communicates better, which is this one. And you will see the difference that I've made. If you watch the other one, you'll see what I have done differently here. I would also be keen to hear your comments on this. And I would like to say that this is what I'm sharing here is my lived experience, what I have observed. It doesn't nullify, I mean, if you're watching and you have a different view, I mean, that's fine. But this is what I can put it would be difficult for me to validate somebody else's experience because they feel differently or they see, oh, well, I've seen this done in certain places. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I haven't. So if I'm advising, I can only advise based on my knowledge, which of course I have to admit that is not, I'm not all knowing, definitely not. But this is what I've observed, in the practice over a period of years. So let's start with definitions. So I'm going to be talking about traditional public relations, strategic public relations, and then strategic communications as well. So I'm differentiating between traditional PR and strategic PR because there's a big difference. Traditional PR is very much the foundation PR that we all started off with. And as we go into all the other slides, you will see why I'm making a distinction between the two. Because I believe that some of the practices that we see, particularly in some of the traditional institutions like government, like, some very like traditional cultural institutions, they lean more to the traditional practice of PR and they struggle with strategic PR. They are not even anywhere near getting to strategic communications. And we'll talk a bit about how that is playing out. And again, like I said, as practitioners, we need to understand this so that if you're working with a client who tends to be more in that traditional PR space, you know that there's a lot of education that you have to do before you bring them to understanding the difference between strategic PR and traditional PR before you even talk about strategic comms. So traditional PR focuses on building and maintaining a positive public image through established media channels like newspapers, magazines, TV and radio. So very much, the very, very traditional way of doing things, traditional print media. Sorry. Very much the traditional way of doing things. Sorry, it leans very much on that. So it's very much it relies on, and I got this screenshots from Google, the AI review. When you just put in a prompt and then the AI comes back, it gathers all the leading thoughts on it and it gives it back to you. So that's what I'm sharing here. So it's whatever the AI checked back for me. So I'm not using my own definitions because I want to define based on what is publicly accepted, which is what the AI, the Google search will bring out for us. So again, definition of public relations is the set of techniques. Now, look, let's first go back to traditional PR, or maybe we start off with PM, public relations first. Is the set of techniques and strategies related to managing how information about an individual or a company is disseminated to the public, especially the media. It's focused on maintaining a brand image, putting a positive spin. Look at the choice of words on negative events to minimize their fallout. This is exactly what traditional PR is. It's about maintaining a brand image, it's about putting a positive spin on negative events. So this language is very important because it's very much a PR language. In strategic communications, you won't find anybody that is really doing strategic communication say you are putting a positive spin. We don't use that word. The word spin does not even exist in strategic communication. In fact, strategic communications, I believe, developed as a reaction to realizing that certain things that were being done in the traditional PR space was not fitted for the 21st century. Traditional PR started in the 20th century. So it was okay for that time when you can manage information, you are the only one, institutions are the only one giving out information. But by the time the world started moving closer into the information and the digital age, it just didn't make sense anymore. So some of those things, let's also image and spin, that's traditional PR. Keep that in mind. So PR can be in form of a press release, news conference. They also post on social media and all of that. Anybody operating in the public eye faces the spread of information, yes. And yeah. So it's an attempt to portray yourself in a certain way to be considered a form of public relations. So again, this definition of PR here, traditional PR, it says building, also see image. That word image always comes up when you're talking about PR. So let's see whether it came up again in strategic PR, because strategic PR, I think, then came about when I think people began to realize that that traditional approach doesn't really work in all contexts. In some contexts, some situations, yes, you have to go and stick traditional, even up till now. But or rather, I would not say you have to. I would say if you stay in the traditional, it will not be a problem. But in some cases, in most cases now, you really have to, depending on the demographic, you may really have to become more strategic. So strategic PR is a planned and proactive approach to managing an organization's communication. You see that they are now using different language with its various publics, aiming to build and maintain positive relationships and achieve specific business objectives. It goes beyond simply reacting to events and focuses on aligning communications with overall organizational goals. You see that difference now. Key aspects of strategic PR is goal-oriented, is proactive, is measurable, is a relationship focused. Again, that's an important thing. Strategic PR emphasizes building and nurturing mutually beneficial relationships with key audiences. That's a big difference between PR and comms, because comms focuses more on communicating messaging, influencing perception, mindset, and thoughts. It's not so much about relationship building. It just wants to control how you think about an issue, what you hear, the opinions that you form, and things like that. The relationship management aspect is a PR thing. So even if I am the one doing the communications, I'm also the one managing the relations. That means I'm doing PR and comms. It doesn't make PR comms, it doesn't make comms PR. Do we understand? It's important that we understand within our practice when we are moving from one focus area to the other, rather than saying because the same people are doing it, it's the same thing. No, it's not. It's not the same thing. And I think within other practices and professions, they understand this. Like if you're in HR and you're somebody that is you're in learning and development, you may decide that you want to do some things in the HR business partnering space. That doesn't now make it part of the learning and development. You are understanding that you are reaching into the HR business partnering space because you need some skills and tools that they use to be able to manage your event or do your learning event properly. But it still doesn't make it core learning and development role. You are leaning into other practice areas within your field to be able to get the results that you want. But then if you don't understand that, you won't know when the limitation of your own knowledge to know when I need to get a HR business partner to work with me on this project so that they can bring that expertise from the HR business partner side and bring it to this project, even though it's a learning and development project. Am I communicating? But I think because we want to harmonize everything, people don't want to say, oh, I can't do this or I can do all things. Therefore, we are hurting ourselves because at the end of the day, you end up going for jobs that you do not have the skills for. You don't even know how to get those skills, even when you now have gotten the job, and you have to now scale up, and even the people that employed you to do the project or the work or anything, they're not happy. So, and at the end of the day, they form a view about the profession as a whole. So the whole idea of today is just to of these videos is to let us just get to a place of understanding about what's core PR, what's traditional PR, what's strategic PR, what's strategic comms, how does it work together, how do they complement. I saw a good definition online about how describing PR and comms, but I don't think I have it here, where it was saying even though they do the same things, that the focus and the attention, the depth and the reach differs, or rather what they were saying, that even though there's a lot of things in common, but that the focus, the depth, the reach is different. So they are not the same. Even on the internet, they were saying that. So that's that. So now let's talk about the definition of strategic communications. And I'm doing a lot of foundation because I think I don't want to be misunderstood in some of the statements that I'll make, because then it's important that let me set the scene. First of all, I have to break these videos on, otherwise it's going to be too long. But anyway, stay with me. So now, definition of strategic communications is that, sorry, let me just check this. Okay. I mean, I always use this all the time. Purposeful and planned use of communication by an organization to achieve its objectives. It involves aligning communication efforts with the organization's goals, carefully selecting channels and messaging, evaluating the effectiveness of those efforts to ensure they contribute to desired outcomes. Do you see anything like image there? Do you see anything like spin there? You also notice, so in a way, strategic PR and strategic comms are sort of like coming to one another, but there are still some differences even between strategic PR and strategic comms. And what I would say that the strategic PR people, they have the tendency, they are closer to traditional PR than strategic comms. Strategic comms is very far, because strategic PR is in between, because it's almost like an kind of thing, although not quite, but you know what I mean. Strategic PR and strategic comms sort of started evolving at the same time. But it's very hard to find a strategic comms person that will fall back on traditional PR. It's difficult, but unless maybe that's their background, let me not make a blanket statement. So strategic comms, very purposeful, very planned, aligned with organizational goals, targeted audience. They identify specific audience, they tailor, they have a multi-channel approach, which is what makes it very different from traditional media or even strategic PR to some extent. Strategic PR too has multi-channel approach, but not as much as strategic comms, because strategic comms will also look at internal comms. And for me, there are little things that let me know where you are at. I see people that you are a corporate comms manager in an organization, and you are issuing out things, and you always do external communication before internal. That already tells me that your mindset, you are still very much in that externally focused space. One major thing that differentiates both traditional PR, strategic PR from strategic comms is it is 100% externally focused. For them, internal audience does not even, it's like you people sort out yourselves, you know what I mean? But they are focused on the external world. But a communication specialist, strategic comms, is focused, sees the world as one, does not differentiate that much between internal and external. That's the big difference. So even if your job title is comms manager, corporate communications manager, or whatever, or director, or whatever, and I notice you and I observe that you are always focused on the external, I can tell that in your heart of hearts, you are a PR person, because you haven't made that shift yet mentally. So anyway, focus on is an integration of disciplines. It draws on various communication disciplines such as PR, marketing, advertising, internal communications to create a cohesive and impactful communication strategy. That's true in that this discipline actually evolved out of PR. It is no longer PR, but like it says, it draws on various. So it even the person who wrote this even classifies PR as a communications discipline, one of several. Again, this is people have different views on this. It's very difficult to classify certain things. But then some people will say, for me, I think it makes sense, but because PR is more than just communication, it's relationship management as well. I would say yes, the communicative part of PR, the marketing part of PR, the advertising part of PR is under the communication discipline, but there's some aspects of PR that are not necessarily under communication discipline. But then where would you put them under again? But that's another thing. So anyway, in essence, strategic communication is about using communication strategically to drive positive change and achieve organizational success. Are you seeing that the language is very different? So that's fine. Okay, so now how does PR and communications work together? And that's I've spent quite a lot of time setting the scene. So let's just do this first slide and then I'll break and then we'll do the other videos. I think I have about 4 slides. So first of all, and what I've done is I've tried to look at different elements and then I will try to show how they play out, so how they work together. So media relations and management, which is traditional media with or without a strong social media presence. Traditional old school is very focused on mainstream media, press statements and TV appearances. They will always favor institutional media and what they do. And mostly politicians, think tanks, they engage journalists, reporters, editors, that kind of thing. Mostly politics, when I look at it, it's mostly politicians, government, and traditional institutions that tend to have this approach. They are very focused on established media channels that have an office. In fact, some of them have that. They almost look down on social media to a very large extent. They just think, they put more premium on the established media houses because they think they have bigger circulation and all of that. Now, strategic PR and strategic comms, I merge them as being the same in terms of how they manage the media. Although there is a difference that, in my view, I think the strategic PR practice and practitioners tend to relate more, do more of the in-person engagement. I find that communication specialists, for whatever reason, do not do as much networking with the media as they should. And it's something that they should be doing, but they're more focused on that comms management and all of that. And I'm being a little bit, I'm making too much of a broad stroke here, but I will say that they do the same thing in terms of media interviews, conferences. But what I find in my mind is that the people who are more PR focused will do all these things, but they will emphasize the in-person engagement, while the comms person will more likely focus on what is going to be said, what is the messaging, how did I issue the statements, what's the media strategy, how do I measure, and all of that, So, but the PR person is likely to focus more on the doing of it and the personal touch thing. But I would say there's no significance different. This is really one of those places where I would say strategic PR and strategic comms, they almost fuse together to the point that it's very difficult to differentiate on a practice level, but on a personal level, I can tell if I'm working with somebody, I can tell if they're managing the media from more of a PR sense or more of a comm sense. And I guess it may even differ depending on the context. So maybe for some campaigns or some initiatives or agendas, you focus more on the in-person contact and the FaceTime and the engagement aspect of it, like physical engagement. And in some other places, you may do more of the offline engagement. So I think one major difference when we're talking about media relations is building your relationship with the media influencers and then using media as a platform. So I think strategic communications tends to emphasize using media as a platform to achieve your goals, whereas strategic PR focuses more on the relationships with the media people, the people, you understand what I'm saying? The people that manage the media and relationship with the platforms too, but then in a very personal way. And I won't say too much, but I think if practitioners, you understand what I'm saying. Now, social media, traditional PR, old school PR, and like old school PR is still working you work with some organizations. For instance, I was thinking about this where I noticed that a lot of our politicians and our leaders, they are still in that traditional PR space because they still think that it's about managing their image and spinning, saying whatever they need to say so that people just know that, oh, they get the support of the people. They have not transited to strategic PR, neither have they transited to strategic comms. And I'm not saying strategic comms is better than strategic PR. I think everybody should be in strategic PR right now. Even if you are doing traditional PR because of context, I think you should be straddling both. I don't see any reason why anybody should be 100% here as a practitioner or as an institution or a corporation or but you find that many of those traditional institutions like faith-based organizations, like governments. In fact, I think that that's probably why governments work very well with those kind of institutions because they have a very traditional, conservative approach, and they don't like they don't like to be told that they are wrong. They don't like being questioned. They don't like being held accountable. They don't like public scrutiny. If you are that kind of organization, you are very likely to fall in here. And this kind of staying in the traditional media space traditional PR space can be very risky if you are in a crisis in this 21st century that is playing out on social media. So anyway, the approach is not very focused on social media and it's not social media content friendly. But in strategic PR, you definitely use social media for awareness, publicity online, buzz for events, campaigns, stakeholders, audiences, and everything. Now, some people think that there is nothing like traditional media and social media have fused into one. That's not true. It's not true. That's absolutely not true. And I think as a practitioner, if you do not understand that traditional media is different from social media, then there's a problem. Because the fact that a traditional media channel has social media presence does not mean that it is the same as a blogger that you and I cannot see, a faceless blogger somewhere. It's completely different. You can hold journalists accountable to their stories. You can trace where the stories are coming from. You can narrow every article down to a reporter. You can pick up a phone and call an editor and speak with an editor. As a comms professional, that makes a big difference in how you manage issues. Faceless online blogs that you can't even locate them. If you don't understand fundamentally that there's a difference between traditional and social media, there is a problem. That means that if you are going to have misinformation, you can't manage a fake news crisis management issue. Because in fake news, most of the time, you have to trace the source and know how to use both traditional and social media. And if you are, for instance, facing a misinformation onslaught that is coming through bots and the faceless people, it's a different ball game. So you have to be able to understand how this our media stratosphere operates. There's an ecosystem. And yes, there are some media houses, they do have social media presence. Some are more social media present than others. It is not the same as me broadcasting as a user community base. We need to be very clear. So, for instance, when you are doing media strategy, up till that's what I do. When a story is going out on social media, who is saying it? Where did it come from? How much traction is it getting? Has it crossed over to mainstream? If it is mainstream social, is on the Twitter account of a newspaper that I saw it, it's still significantly different than the page of an influencer, depending on the situation. So you have to, because by the time the mainstream media carries the story, it has been legitimized. It doesn't mean you should ignore it when it's on social, when it's on not on mainstream media. But I'm saying at that point, your issue has become bigger than what it was before. If it is, and it's even worse if it is being carried by mainstream negatively and also by faceless blogs, you are in that's big trouble. Because before you can counter that, so I'm just saying we need to understand that the differences between the two. I will never, so far I do not see anything that suggests that I will separate social media from traditional. Because even as a crisis manager, it helps me to understand how big an issue is. So when people are saying this is not an issue, I will be able to tell them that, look, I will break the media landscape down to them and say, this story is not only here, it is in here, it is here, it has crossed over, crossed over. I will say all the stage gates because we have seen stories that stay only on social media, mainstream does not pick it up. In fact, if you notice a lot of the negative stories about the government, hardly do you see, like in Nigeria, I'm speaking from Nigeria, you hardly ever see the mainstream media carried. Why? Because the government holds the traditional PR, mainstream media more accountable, traditional media more accountable. But they're not able to do that with with the other social media platforms. So why will I fuse them the same? I hope you get what I'm saying. So let's just leave that. So strategic public relations, is for used for awareness, publicity online. There's a good use of social media for publicity online, content creation, marketing and sales, advertising and promo, majorly for in-person, but also for virtual. Traditional PR, for strategic PR people, they would host both virtual events, they will hold in person. But I've noticed when they do in person and virtual, they tend to focus more on the in person and not as much on the virtual. So yeah, that balance, some people are able to manage it well. But I anyway, let me not get into that. But I have some views about that. But I don't want to annoy anyone. But yeah, there's certain things I've observed. I've observed that I can tell when some people manage it where they have a physical event and the online experience is as rich as the in-person. Some people are able to do that. I've seen a few that I think do it quite well. I've seen, yeah, I won't mention names, so I've seen some, but most people, there's always that, it's always, they lean more to the in-person, which shouldn't be the case, but then that's that. So for strategic communications on social media, big extensive use of social media, com specialists love social media. They will use more channels than necessary if you allow them to. Social media strategy and plan, there's social listening, sentiment analysis, content and platform strategy. They will use data to determine where they're going to use. Community management is so much a big thing. Content creation, marketing and sales strategy, all of that they will do. Com specialists, strategic com specialists, they are very intentional about the use of social media, and like I said, they will go multi-channel if given the, whether it's necessary or not, which of course can be a downside. But if you're someone that really knows the strategic communications framework, you know that you use the channels that will best achieve your purposes, not just because you want to do so. Now, if it's government and community relations, that's what is being done, the practice area, then traditional PR will focus mainly on the in-person experience, building relationships, face time with them. That's what they prioritize. Both closed door, one-on-one, that's old school way. Let's go and meet him. Let's go to his house. Don't call him. Let's go there. That's how they do. Strategic PR will involve networking, relationship management. They'll do all of that in person mostly as well. They may have some digital outreach or, but they would also prioritize in person. That's how PR is. And this kind of relationships, you cannot manage it online. It has to be there personally. I think where I would say the digital aspect comes is if there's an event and then, they have an online strategy around that. They feature them, video before, video after, that kind of thing. So, but strategic com doesn't directly get involved in government or community relations, but they support with crafting messaging for engagement, which the relations people will go and use, and then media statements or publications that are intended to influence from a distance. So the comms specialist will be involved in creating the brochure or the handbook that they're going to share, or the presentation or whatever it is that you are sharing with the VIP when you're meeting them, the material. So protocol management in the traditional PR space, very personal and traditional, is about respect and recognition, and is more focused on use of traditional face-to-face in-person channels. For strategic PR, it's the same thing, VIP meet and greet, courtesy visits, but I think they will also include digital and social media recognition as possible. Strategic PR tends to sort of like fuse the old and the new. So even if, except in cases where, okay, it's a very how would I say, confidential meeting, they will try to put some digital spin to it, maybe take photos, post on social media and things like that. For most of the traditional PR people, they will still be looking at front page, photograph front page of the newspaper, and they may not even worry about whether it's posted on social or not. They may or may not. It's not a biggie for them so long as they were in the papers. And up till today, yes, it's still like that. So strategy comms, protocol management, not really a thing for us, but could be involved on occasion. I think where the protocol management that a comms person is likely to be involved with is the digital aspect of it. So that making sure you are building a system that recognizes who your VIPs are, communications messaging goes to them, they're managed all through the process, that whole reception thing for an event, just making that there's a word for it, I've forgotten the word that they do right now, that there's an automated thing that so comm specialists are more likely to introduce that, PR people too as well, but that's the only context I can think that strategic comms people will get involved in protocol management, which is about how you receive people or make sure that they have a good reception or are recognized in the events. I think also in the program management, all that comms people would probably, okay, in the order of the program, make sure that the protocols are well respected and all of that. So, and that, people are, the strategy around making sure that people are recognizing the program and the content around the program and the visuals around the program, which is not really protocol management. Well, recognition, it could be part of that. So internal comms, not applicable to PR at all, and very much a big space for communication specialists. Very big space. In fact, the depth of which you are familiar with any of these things that I've written here determines whether you are at knowledge level, you are at skilled level, or you're at mastery level for internal comms. Internal comms, the strategy and plan, the structures, the policies, the procedures, the guidelines, the platforms. Internal comms has their own platforms, leadership communications, change management, employee engagement, all of that is firmly in the internal communication space. Now, campaigns and events, I'll bring this video to a close here. For traditional PR, they prioritize, like I said, established media channels and institutions, TV, radio, national radio, print, and all of that. Strategic PR, they use a mix of in-person and digital to create in-person and strong online experience, but they're also very focused on in-person experience unless the event is fully virtual. For strategic comms, they use a mix of in-person and digital. Most strategic comms people would rather have a digital event, but then of course we do have the personal. But we're very strong. There will be a typical strategic comms event. Will, even when it's in person, you focus on amplifying the online experience afterwards, post event. Again, like I said, there are little things that let me know whether you're working in strategic PR mode or strategic comms mode. Strategic comms, they can spread the amplification of an event 90 days after the event happened. They are so, in fact, from get-go, the communication strategy is already thinking of post-event. The pre-event is important, they make sure they get the right people in the room, but that post-event amplification, why? Because strategic comms people are very important, are very focused on the corporate brand. So they want to milk that event for as long as they can. They're not so focused on that day on its own, but how to amplify it. So they're likely to be very focused on content creation, visuals, metrics, and analytics. Strategic purposes more focused on attendance, filling the hall, making sure that in-room experience. So that's what I mean about we're doing the same thing, but the depth and the reach is different. So if you are somebody, like as I'm saying this, just begin to ask yourself when you run an event, which areas do I tilt more on? Are you more of a, so this will help Unfortunately, like I said, in our practice, there is no assessment that anyone can do. Maybe somebody needs to create it to make you know how much of a strategic PR person are you, how much of a strategic comms person are you. I guess some organizations have their own ways of doing it, but this is my own, I just put this together, thank God for that. Just recently thinking through this and saying, what is the difference between public relations and communication? And I think breaking it down into traditional versus strategic PR was good for me because, and I thank God for that inspiration, because before then I would make some statements that was more of traditional PR and people, it's not really, it's not true to life for today. For all PR, so there's a need to differentiate. But I think the important thing is to know that there is traditional PR still existing and people are still operating in that mode. The Nigerian government, for instance, is stuck in this column here. This is where they are. Whereas they're supposed to be here to build trust and build reputation. But they are here. They are not even here yet. Even though they are using social media. Well, I would say maybe they're somewhere here because they do use social media, but they are still in that mindset of image making and spin. So I know that for sure they are not here. Even if at all they are here, they are not here at all. So I'll stop this video here and please give me your comment. Let me know what you think. And please drop your comments here. Whatever platform you're watching this on, please drop your comments here. I would love to hear from you so that we can have a conversation about this. And then, let's keep it going. So, but watch out for the next 2 or 3 videos as well. Thank you for watching and please share. Don't forget to follow us and like and subscribe depending on which platform you're watching this. Thank you. Take care.